So, today, I just want to lightly introduce, the next section, which is the trigonometric functions. So if you don't know what the trigonometric functions are, it's sine, cosine, tangent, all the good stuff. If you have a calculator, that would be a major thing to bring tomorrow. I'm not going to do any major calculations today. I just want to talk about them today, just to introduce what the words are. We're going to do the main three today. We'll just introduce them what they are. Then tomorrow we'll start using your calculator, knowing how to type it in, and then we'll do the other trig functions as well tomorrow. Question?
You're talking about Sohcahtoa?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, I want to do a brief introduction to it, and we're just doing it for acute angles, small angles. So, if you don't know what the trig functions are, if you heard that, we have this little acronym that we call Sohcahtoa. It's this little acronym we have that helps us with remembering the formula. That's all this is. This is a simple acronym for the formula to help you remember what it is. So when you have, your test, I usually write Sohcahtoa at the top right away when I do a trig test. So that would be something I'd recommend. That. Now, the letters. S, the capital S, that's your trig function. The trig functions in general. The first one, S, stands for sine. This is the correct spelling of it, right? So that's the sine function. The C on that next part is cosine. And then T in the back is tangent. Now you probably won't see me spell those words all the way out probably ever again. I usually just write S-I-N, which is sine, and then C-O-S, which is cosine, and T-A-N, which is tangent. So I'll just use the abbreviations of them from now on. But they mean a certain stipulation for the sides of your triangle, and this works for right triangles only. So I want you to keep that in mind. I'm gonna write that down because some people just don't even realize this. Right triangles only. Now I will eventually, if it allows me to write this. Come on, let me write the word triangle. All right, or not? Oh, come on. Alright, right triangles only. I'll just have to put it there. It's just there's a dead spot there. Okay, so right triangles only. It doesn't work for any other type. Now, I will eventually show you how to modify these so you can use them on other types of triangles, but it's a lot of work when we get there. And I think that's a part of chapter 7 when we get to that part. So that's like later down the road. Again, we're mixing chapter 4 and 5 together in this unit. This is the second section out of 4 for chapter 4. So chapter 4 only has 4 sections. So it goes pretty quick. We're almost there. So, all right. So now let's talk about what sine is, and then I'll talk about what cosine is and tangent, and then we'll be finished for the day. I just want to introduce what the words are. So, if I have a right triangle. Okay, it doesn't matter how you draw it, but it has to have a right angle in there. The other two angles are acute. They're also complementary, if you remember that from geometry class. The two angles that are left over in a right triangle have to add up to be 90. So it doesn't matter the numbers. I'm just going to make up some numbers here. So let's say that this angle here is 15 degrees. Then the other angle has to be 75. They have to add up to be 90 every single time. I'm going to get rid of those numbers here in a second, but does everyone make sense of that for a right triangle? Okay, so now let me get rid of those. I don't want those on my drawing because it doesn't have to be those numbers specifically. Okay, so whatever angle you choose on here, not the right angle, it has to be one of the acute angles. So I'll just pick one of them. I'll pick this one over here. So if I pick this angle right here, I'm going to call it theta. It could be any number you want. It could be anything from 1 degree up to 89 degrees. Okay, 2. I don't care. It could be any number. Okay. When you set up your trig functions, they're based on where your angle sits. Okay. So if your angle is currently sitting right there, okay, it's sitting in that weird location. This is what I want you to know. Here's what I like you to know. This wall right here that is directly straight across your picture, that is called the opposite side. That's the opposite side for where your angle sits. The wall that is right next to it is called the adjacent. Now, how do I know these two? The opposite and adjacent have to be the two walls that touch your 90. They have to touch the 90-degree angle. They're adjacent to the 90. And then, obviously, the biggest wall of your right triangle, the wall that is not touching the 90, that is called the hypotenuse. Hypotenuse. Whoa. So those are my labels that you have. Now, if my angle were to move to a different location, you have to relabel your picture. The labels will change depending on where your picture sits, where your angle sits. So just be aware of that. It's a fluid changing picture as we go. So don't always just memorize this. Note how I did it. Opposite straight across, adjacent's next to, hypotenuse is the big wall. Okay, now, how this works is for right triangles only, you do your trig functions, and I'm just going to intro the first one today, because once you understand the concept, it makes sense. Let's do the sine function here. Let's just do this one today, just to introduce this. Sohcahtoa, right? The so part stands for sine of your angle is equal to, and now the two letters in the back are the fraction that you write after it. O, the second letter there after the S, the second letter goes on the top of your fraction, and the third letter goes on the bottom. So does that make sense for the so part?
Here.
O stands for opposite, and H stands for hypotenuse. So whatever your numbers are, you can plug them into those locations. I have my angle, which is theta in my case. I have my opposite wall, and I have my hypotenuse wall. Typically, you do this function, this sine function, if you're missing one of those numbers. One of them. That's when we do it. If you're not missing any of those numbers, don't pick the sine function, pick a different function, because it will use the other letters. So maybe you want to find one that will have just one letter missing. That's why we have the trig functions. It's great for finding one missing piece. It could be the angle's missing, it could be the wall is missing, one of the walls. But not all three, and you can't have two of them missing. It has to be just one letter. And then we do some simple algebra to solve that thing out. That's where your calculator will come in handy tomorrow. Okay? All right, does that make sense? Okay, we're going to go through more of these tomorrow. Today was just to introduce what we're doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's it for today. Said it was going to be nice and simple and to the point. That was my example.